went into Mitzrayim that they went in fighting. They had to fight 7 wars just to get into the land. But even more than that, as we'll see today in our Midrash. We'll also look at a timeline. Not that we'll try to go through every one of them, but just to kind of touch bases on some things about the timeline that helps us understand that the history that we read in our history books in school include us. We just have not been included. So now I'm going to include us where we were during these different times. And some of the aspects we'll just point out, and when certain things happened. We'll also look at Haiti, which was one of the top economic countries, developed with big buildings and houses. It was called the Paris before Paris even happened. So they were directly the cause of a lot of wealth going into not only France, but France. They made them very wealthy, but France had so much wealth from Haiti that they were able to do import or export business because they were putting out so much sugar. And to this day, we have not obtained yet our 40 acres. We didn't even get a mule. This is something very awesome. It's a medallion. And from what I searched and started finding out is this is a memorial of where slavery kind of started, kind of breaking down the wall. And it was a case by a judge in Britain. I'll go ahead and start so that we can start from the beginning. Okay. The African diaspora, enslavement. African diaspora, or African or the diaspora, a Greek translation, dia between, through, cross. And what they did is they took 2 words and they put them together. One says, I sow, I scatter. The other says, between. The first mention of the diaspora or exile found in the Septuagint translated to mean, thou shalt be a diaspora or a diaspora, a dispersion, thank you, in all kingdoms of the earth. This was spoken by God to the Hebrews' original sense when the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek. In the ancient Greece, the term diaspora means scattering. The term derives from the verb diaspora or diaspora, I scatter, to spread. And basically you can find this in Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, Nehemiah, Jeremiah. Each of these are examples of diaspora, and where the Greek who used this to try to write some understanding, what they did is they took 2 parts of a word, put them together to try to come to the best understanding of what was being said. So, in what was being said is, I scatter you, I sow you. So this is what diaspora means, and what they were doing to try to capture the essence of what they were trying to translate. World history. See if I can get someone to read so I can kind of in and out. Someone who's not eating. Can you read that for us? From here.
The African diaspora.
Nice and loud.
The African diaspora was the movement of Africans and their descendants to places throughout the world, historically applied in particular to the descendants of the Africans who were enslaved and shipped to all continents, including the America by way of the Arabic and Atlantic slave trade, with the largest population in Brazil.
Okay, so this explains to us that the African diaspora, the largest sowing is actually Brazil. We'll take a better look at that in just a moment. And one of the things that I found that there were certain entities that were negotiating contracts, let's say, and I'm going to be nice with that. These were contracts that were made for the spreading, the capture first, and delivering workers. In this PowerPoint, I just want to look at some particulars to show what was going on. What was the environment? What was happening here? Stories about Songhai, the wealthiest African king in the world. Who was Songhai? I have an African book that speaks about him, and there was a lot of word that went from people who were going into Africa, were getting information about this king who was more wealthy than any other king in the world. He had so much gold that he was the most wealthy king in the world. So, what did that do? That sparked an interest in those who were after what? The gold. So what did they do? They went into Africa. And Dominique Henrique was one of the people who was actually, he was a royalty from Spain. Yeah, he was from Spain. And he went, from Portugal. He went to try to lay claim to some of this gold. So 1441 AD, he set out for Africa to find some of this gold. Now, the Islamic Berbers brought back the first slaves to the Iberian Peninsula. What this is also showing that the Arabic nations had already been enslaving. And actually, from some of my research, I found that during the 8th century, they were already going into Africa, trying to convert people over to Islam. You did not convert. They captured you, brought you out, made you slaves, and over time, you either converted or they killed you, one or the other. The Spaniards and Portuguese were all well aware of the strength and the qualities of Negroes as cheap labor. Now, this one speaks to in the different continents or the different places where they found people to enslave, a lot of times they died from the disease that followed the European trappers. So the natives that was here, and this is further in, but they were also in some of the Caribbean islands. When they enslaved them, times they would start dying out and therefore in need of replenishing. So at some point, the Spaniards and Portuguese had made a decision on the best quality of workers were African descent. So that's why I have that there. There were 12 Negroes captured who were taken back to Portugal as proof, and the European decided that they would cut out the middlemen by no longer dealing with the Arabic traders. So what Dominic Henry Haig did is he took 2 black slaves and gave them to the Pope as proof that we have a rich commodity, that if we were to venture into this area, that we would have, 1, a very strong, renewable people, residual, because basically in this 12, what I found is they had both men, women, boys, and girls. So they had men and women to reproduce now. They had boys and girls to grow up and to work the field and also reproduce. So as they reproduced, they multiplied as workers. Looking at the diaspora, if you can see this map very well, if you can see this good, these lines are showing basically out of Africa, coming out of Africa into all the nations, South America, North America, Europe, and these lines are basically giving us directions as to where each of the slave ships were directed to. What are we to be called? A byword, Deuteronomy 28:30. You shall marry a wife, and another shall lie with her. 32. Your sons and daughters shall be given to another people. 33. The fruit of your ground and all your labor shall be eaten up by a nation which you do not know, and you shall always be oppressed and crushed. Just based on these 3, if we were to put up a checklist, can these 3 at least be checked off so far? That we married, even though we married, the slave master went into the bedchambers. And during that time, it didn't matter where you were, because all he did was told you to get out or just hang around. It didn't matter because he was the master. So we can check that off. I won't dig too far into that because I got a lot here to go. Your sons and daughters sold to others. In slavery, that's what they do. You have a child, that child gets to stay with you for a certain amount of years, and it is auctioned off. They have prices for different age range, prices for female, price for male. Each had its own desire. Women were good for multiplying, bringing in more. Men were good for working. They were workhorses, and they were strong. They could run, so they were shackleless, so they couldn't run too far. If you've seen Roots, if you haven't, it's available, it's out there. Deuteronomy 28:36 37, Yahweh shall cause you and your king, who rise up over you, whom you shall raise up over you, to go to a nation which you have not known. You and your fathers, and you shall serve other gods there.